Well, good morning. This is a very impressive room. Welcome to the Salem Convention Center, and likely the only event you'll ever attend in this room that is not only free for you to attend, but will not have a table captain passing out envelopes asking for donations at the end. Thank you all for being here to the 2020 SVN Economic Forum. We appreciate you so much. I'm going to be really brief. My name is Kurt Arthur. I'm the owner and managing director of SVN Commercial Advisors. This is a special day for us. We always say that this is the hardest thing that we do for the year, but it's also the best thing that we do. No question about it. Wouldn't happen if not only all of you were willing to come, and I really want to thank all of our sponsors. 2 years ago at this event, we had 8 corporate sponsors, and we don't solicit. Last year we had 13. This year, there are 20 of you that wanted to sponsor this event. That's huge, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate that. Thank you. I want to really shout out about 2 different sponsors, really. This event wouldn't be what it is today if I hadn't gotten a phone call 11 or 12 years ago. When we opened SVN in 2007, we did our first event in a really tiny venue when CCBI for Shemakata first opened. 60 people, 65 people, something like that. And my good friend Jim Griggs gave me a call, and he said, you know, we think that our company thinks that this market deserves that content in a bigger venue. What can we do to help you get there? And so for Jim, for everybody at Sawfeld Griggs who made that initial call, thank you guys very much. And then secondly, about 7 years ago, I got a call from Ryan Albritton at US Bank, and he just simply said, what does it take for US Bank to help you get to the next level? And you guys have been here. They're all at the head table because we appreciate them so much. Couldn't do this with all of our sponsors, but specifically US Bank. So please thank those 2 parties for me if you would. An event like this takes a lot of planning, so there are some folks that I certainly want to acknowledge. First, as you walked in today and were greeted at the reception table, you were greeted by our friends from both First American Title and from Fidelity National Title, and my beautiful daughter was over here handing out the booklet, so want to thank them. And then really for this planning, there are 2 individuals outside of the amazing staff that we have here at the Convention Center. Our friends at Allied Video. This is being filmed for CCTV, so this will be shown on CCTV. The video will be linked on our website, so if you have friends or coworkers that weren't able to come, we'll be able to get that to you. But this doesn't happen without the tireless efforts of 2 ladies, and that's Heather Miller and Barb Arthur, so I want to give them a big round of applause. And last but not least, I'm kind of a proud pop about our team. We have an amazing team of advisors at SVN. In 2019, we finished a record year. We closed about $80 million in commercial real estate sales, leasing, development ground, what have you. The thing I'm most proud of is that our guys and gals have gone in there to make sure that they are as educated as they possibly can be. We finished the year with an average transaction size that was around $1.4 million, and compared to an industry standard in commercial real estate of about 450. So I feel proud that we're kind of doing the bigger deals in the marketplace. It allows us as brokers and advisors working with you to roll up our sleeves, really prove our wealth to you. So I want to ask our advisors. Unfortunately, our Eugene office was not able to be here today, but I want to ask our advisors one by one. So if you would please stand, George Grabenhorst. In the back, Tom Hendry. Tommy, where are you? Over there in the corner, the dark corner. Mike Fulgaro. Nick Williams. And a great new announcement. Bill Riffle, will you please stand? Where's Billy? There he's back there in the white shirt. Bill recently joined our team. Many of you know Bill. He was with Shemakata Community College for 2 decades plus, running their real estate operations. Bill has joined our team as we have launched into commercial property management. We are not going to be doing residential or multifamily, strictly commercial. Bill is leading that charge, and in the first 60 days, we've already put 100,000 square feet under management contracts. So excited to have him on the team. We've got great things ahead on that. So, and then lastly, we have a couple of friends. This is a great announcement for me. I'm going to ask a couple friends over here in the corner, Mike and Brenda Barron, to stand up if you wouldn't mind. Mike goes way back in the old days of Sperry Van Ness, started with Sperry Van Ness back when it was in Southern California back in the 80s. Mike and Brenda are residents in Central Oregon and Redmond, and we're very happy to announce they're joining our team, and we will have a presence over in Central Oregon. So please welcome them and thank our entire team. One of the privileges that I have at this event is I asked a dear friend a couple of years ago if he would have a presence in last year to be our MC. Very excited that the mayor, this is a permanent position as long as you're in that seat. But it's absolutely my distinct thrill, whether he talks for 15 seconds or 15 minutes, I don't care, the podium's his. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the great mayor of the city of Salem, Mayor Chuck Bennett.
Well, good morning, and in my opinion, welcome to probably one of the single most important events we have in Salem, which is this economic report brought to you by SVN. I've been coming to it for a number of years and have consistently found it to be one of the really best overall looks at our community's economic health. Second probably only to today's State of the City speech from your mayor, which, as you will see, I think hearing this one, it's going to be a pretty positive speech, aside from a couple of issues that seem to be catching everyone's attention. I don't know why. The other thing I want to mention, and it caught me off guard this morning, when Kurt said that there would be no table captains. Understand it's a political season, and I fully expected every politician here to have an envelope with them, and I hope if one of your political table captains hands you an envelope, you'll assist them in their endeavors to seek, I hope, replacements on the city council. I'm real simple. It's time to get a... I particularly want to point out my dear friend Jose Gonzalez, who, by the way, is a candidate for city council. We're very excited about him coming on. As I said, this is an opportunity, I hope, twice today to share in the reality of what's going on in Salem, that we are, in fact, booming in this community. When you have cranes starting to appear as regularly as we do over a city, something's going on. For those of you who travel, just because I look for someplace else to go, I go to London fairly regularly. And I'll tell you what you see there are cranes on the skyline, a changing skyline with cranes. You know what I found really fun coming downtown today? I saw a skyline with cranes. It felt really good. I think it's extremely exciting what's happening in Salem in every sector you're going to hear about today. So, you know, as you walk out today, you're going to see things that don't make you happy about Salem. Please take with you how positive it is in this community and how more positive it can be if we have some changes on that city council will do the work they're expected to do. So that's enough politics for you this morning. You're welcome again to come to the State of the City and just have another dose. Some people just can't seem to get over it. I seem to have found myself in that category. I have the real honor this morning of introducing Tom Hoffert, who's going to serve as MC today. Tom is CEO of the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. And prior to the Salem Chamber, Tom spent 14 years in food manufacturing, distribution, and customer fulfillment at Don Pancho Authentic Mexican Foods. Tom is a graduate in business from Western Oregon University and also has a certificate in nonprofit management from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. That's an interesting degree in nonprofit from the Chamber of Commerce. A lot of you probably know that feeling early on in your careers. Tom is active in local politics and a strong advocate for small business in Oregon. In his leisure, Tom serves as a high school collegiate and professional lacrosse official and sits on the National Subcommittee for Officials within U.S. Lacrosse. will you do a demonstration? I want to know. It's kind of like cricket. What's the deal there? Tom was born and raised in Salem and resides just outside the downtown area with his dog, Lucy. Tom, thank you.
Well, there is a lot of things to be very, very positive about in this community, and myself and Mayor Bennett had the opportunity yesterday as we did a ribbon cutting over in West Salem, and when you look at the great things that are happening in this community, is often clouded when we drive downtown and see some of the challenges with our friends and neighbors on the streets. We know that we are entering a political season, and that need not be ducked. We need to run to conflict and know that sometimes a change in trajectory can be healthy for a community. I hope that we all take the opportunity to support individuals who are providing this community thoughtful leadership. And I know that times of challenge bring communities together rather than pull them apart. I think as we look at the May election coming up, it is going to be about being active and not taking a passive role when we look at our responsibilities to get out on the front line. Sometimes it's going to require that we walk over the course of an evening, possibly ask for a friend for a little bit extra change out of their pocket towards a campaign. But to create positive things in this community requires activation and engagement. We must not sit idly by and allow individuals who would rather compress the city and not see the growth and not see the cranes and not see the ability for our people to have a positive infrastructure to get around, allow that momentum to continue in our city. So I would ask you to engage, be active, and support thoughtful leadership that would like to see positive things happen in this community. Today we are going to talk about a few of those things, and on my right and left are very skilled individuals who ultimately are counted on being leaders within their fields, and I'll introduce those speakers in a moment. But I would like to start by asking, and there are quite a few in the crowd, any elected officials to please stand and be recognized. If you do so now. I know I saw Kevin Cameron back. We have quite a few. Great. Thank you for your service. It's often a thankless job, and as Chuck reminds me often, all the dollars he's receiving for serving as mayor of the city of Salem help in that retirement account. In all honesty, the first step to servant leadership is being willing to step up, and those leaders that are taking a position in our community and willing to run to be an elected official deserve our support regardless of which side of the aisle they land on. So our organization is focused on really 4 themes in which we feel we can have an impact here locally. And if you look at organizations like the Salem Chamber and SEDCOR, Travel Salem and the like, we all have a central theme, and that is to provide a platform where businesses and leaders such as yourself have a way to connect and see positive results. And sometimes those results aren't always in cranes, but rather in workforce development and a strengthened economy. I think we can all agree a sound local economy enables a lot of very, very special things to happen. Because with a strong local economy, we have the filter downwards into our services and our nonprofits. And I know all of you around this room, while there won't be, as Kurt mentioned, the envelope passed around, you are the ones enabling our social services and nonprofits to be successful. And so our hats off to you in that. The Salem Chamber stands for advocacy, visibility, connecting and learning, and of course, being the premier convener of conversation in this community. It is not our duty to always have the answer, but rather to facilitate the discussion, and we take that role very seriously. Our board of directors is committed to that, and I'm proud to say that Kurt Arthur served as president of our Salem Chamber Board and was the individual who reached out to me to see if I would be willing to make a change out of the food service world and back into the nonprofit world, and I'm very, very pleased that I made that choice. It's been an incredibly positive last 16 months. Myself and a couple others on Monday were doing some tabulations, and we've crossed over $600 million of new investment in this city within the last 16 months. So as you look around the Nordstrom property and the Rite Aid and you see and feel some of the compression and the toughness that we're facing, know also that we ought to be very proud that this city is having some very major investment in platforms that are going to continue to spawn economic health. Those projects include, of course, a beautiful new hotel, and the Salem Convention Center is investing in their expansion, the YMCA, Union Gospel Mission, the Cause Development, North Bank Reconstruction, and there are many others. We ought to be very proud in telling that story, because what grabs the headlines is the negativity of a short session or sometimes the challenges of our homeless population, and what isn't talked about is the economic strength that is occurring right now and building towards a more positive future in Salem. Now on to my MC duties. Today you are going to hear from a number of very talented individuals, but without the banners around this room, and I would ask you to take a moment and refer to those sponsors who have made this possible. They are also in your program. Events like this don't occur, and as Kurt mentioned, they crossed the 20 sponsor threshold this year. This event actually has some incredible history. In 1991, this event was kicked off when Kurt was with Coldwell Banker Mountain West Commercial. I will say this, 13 years ago, when Kurt flipped the script and joined SVN Commercial Advisors, the commitment to having this event continued. And as you saw, he has put together a very skilled team of advisors that are looking to promote that economic growth in this city. We're at a critical point, so let's get on to the wonderful individuals who are going to give you some statistics and keys to help strengthen your business, and you can put in your quiver as you walk throughout this community each and every day. Kurt Arthur will be, who is SIOR certified and is the office and retail market manager as well as owner at SVN Commercial Advisors. Eric Anderson will, from Sedcor, will be addressing the industrial sector. Catherine Powell-Bands, MAI certification, will address multifamily housing market. Mike Erdman, who is from the Home Builders Association of Marion Polk County, will discuss our residential developments. And Eric Henney from Northwest Farm Credit Services will touch base on the agricultural market. So there's an incredible cross-section that is coming together to provide us with information that we can now take forward and take notes as we go out to strengthen our position on why Salem is such a great place to be doing business. At this point, we would like to obviously thank one special sponsor who made this possible today, and that is our friends at U.S. Bank. This is an institution that, as Kurt had mentioned, stepped up and said, we don't need the limelight on us, but rather, we just want this crowd to know we are premier banking industry ready to provide commercial lending. I would like to invite Troy McDermott, Vice President of Commercial, and the team leader at U.S. Bank to come give us an introduction to U.S. Bank's commitment to this event. Please welcome Troy.
Lower it down for me. There we go. Okay, good morning. All right, thank you, Tom, for your introduction, and thank you, Kurt, for giving U.S. Bank this opportunity to be the title sponsor for this fantastic and informative event. Here we go. My name is Troy McDermott, and I'm the commercial team leader and designated real estate specialist for the U.S. Bank Pacific Valley region. I'd like to take a few minutes this morning to share with you some financial highlights about U.S. Bank and about our One U.S. Bank approach to doing business as a local community bank that connects our customers to a team of local bankers working together to deliver relationship banking with full access to all the financial solutions offered by a national bank. And I know this slide is a little difficult to see probably from way in the back, but for context, U.S. Bank's at the top, so we'll just all agree on that. Yeah. For over 150 years, U.S. Bank has established itself to be one of the nation's premier commercial banks with established branch banking, commercial real estate banking, corporate and commercial banking, and trust and payment services. And as the nation's fifth largest bank with $488 billion in assets and best-in-class key metrics such as return on average assets of 1.57%, return on common equity of 15.3%, and an efficiency ratio of 53.3%, and the strongest debt rating among our peers, which we're really proud of. We differentiate ourselves by our community banking business model that adds value to our customer relationships and to our local communities. U.S. Bank Community Banking, which is driven from a longstanding, proven, successful local bank approach, delivers to you several key elements that include what we call customer obsession and relationship management, outstanding community involvement and leadership with investments in Oregon totaling $185 million in new market tax credits, $8 million in foundation and corporate giving, $222 million in community development loans, and 45,962 employee volunteer hours. Our local bank approach also delivers elements such as local decision making, more than 70 local advisory boards, and a one U.S. Bank approach that provides customers full access to a range of products and services. One U.S. Bank is what gives U.S. Bank Community Banking our edge in our market. We offer all the products and services of a national bank, but at the local level to fully meet the needs of our customers. Led by your local relationship manager, we bring together your team of local bankers and product partners that work together to deliver online and mobile banking services that gives you account information in real time and the ability to send, request, and receive funds electronically using our Zelle platform, and all with the protection of our online risk-free guarantee. We deliver deposit and treasury management solutions that provides competitive interest rates and safety and soundness for your deposits, and full access to a large suite of cash flow management tools, fraud protection, credit cards, and other payment systems. We provide equipment financing that offers competitive interest rates, terms, and even 100% financing. We have wealth management here in our Salem office that offers private personal banking, investments, 401k, insurance, trust and estate planning, and even business valuation and succession planning. Of course, we have home mortgage financing that offers a user-friendly online and mobile application process for both construction and long-term home loans. And we have access to capital markets for our customers that brings together debt solutions for private and municipal tax-exempt financing, fixed income, interest rate swaps, private placements, loan syndications, and even foreign exchange services. And global trade services that gives your international business access to import-export letters of credit that minimizes your risk of doing business overseas. And small business and community lending that delivers working capital lines of credit, business acquisition financing, and agricultural production loans. And of course, commercial real estate that delivers competitive interest rates, terms for both owner-occupied and investment property acquisition, refinancing, and construction, including SBA financing that can offer advanced rates up to 90% for owner-occupied property. So combining all these elements together into one strategy is how we deliver one U.S. Bank to all of you. So in closing, Kurt, I'd like to thank you once again for giving U.S. Bank this opportunity to be part of this amazing event. I'd like to introduce Kurt Arthur, bring him up to the podium so he can present his real estate office market update. Thank you, Kurt.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Troy. Again, we wouldn't be able to do this. Thanks, everybody from U.S. Bank. Your partnership is such a critical foundational building block for this event, so thank you guys again. So let's talk about the office market real quickly. Before I get into slides, I want to talk a little bit about the overall market and the theme here in office, as it is with actually a fair amount of the products out there, is scarcity. And one of the problems, why do we have scarcity? One of the big problems is coming out of the recession, everything changed, right? You run your businesses differently, bankers bank differently. I mean, it's all different. If I were to look 15 years ago, working with some local investors, some of which I think are in the crowd today, that have built office buildings, 15 years ago, we were able to go down and meet with our local banker, and let's say we were going to build a 25,000 square foot office building. We had letters of intent on, half of the building. Boom, away we go, right? The bank's all in, here we go, appraisal, the whole 9 yards. Things have gotten a lot different post-recession. So to build a building these days, as TJ Sullivan will attest, is a lot more difficult. You have to come to the table with bona fide leases signed for the vast majority of your building. Your equity requirements to get financing are much more difficult. And then the hidden elephant in the room is we've seen this massive influx in cost of construction, right? And in a market where our rents did not necessarily escalate as fast over the last 5 years as we had hoped, it's left building a new building very, very difficult to do. So from that standpoint, you're going to see kind of a theme when we talk about the office market. So this slide it talks a little bit about vacancies. And if you take a look, really, what I want you to pay attention to is the yellow line on top is the U.S. national vacancy for office rates. The green line right in the middle is the overall vacancy rate for the city of Salem. The blue line at the bottom, this is key, the blue line is the bottom, on the bottom is the vacancy rate over the past three to 4 years of the nicest Class A office product in the marketplace. It's currently running at like 1.2%, virtually nothing at this point in time. Absorption. So what is absorption? Absorption means we're actually leasing or occupying more space than tenants are giving back at this point in time. Positive absorption is a positive thing for our marketplace. It's a good sign that if you have positive absorption, typically you've got vacancy rates falling, supply and demand kicks in, rent should start rising. And as you can see over the last 3-4 years, our positive absorption has been very positive. That relays into that one slide. I talked about how this is really the have and the have-nots in this marketplace. Quality is outperforming the marketplace. So in Salem, we have a very high propensity of lower grade properties, lower class B, class C type assets. Here's why if you are an owner of that product, you want to either consider selling or you want to consider making a substantial retrofit of your building to get it up to today's standards. If you take a look, the national rent growth across the United States was at 1.5% last year. The average rate of Salem was 1.9. Remember this, the average rate was 1.9. The average rent growth for the Class A buildings in this marketplace, 6.5%. Tenants are flocking to the nicest buildings in this marketplace. 6.5 is a really impressive number. You know what's not is the 0.4%. The rest of the market is growing rent-wise. So a big disconnect between the nicer properties and those of maybe lower Class B, Class C kind of properties. One of the things as we have the mayor here every year, I am so excited about, and I hope this is a permanent feature we started last year, is we want this event to be a conduit each year. The medical community in Salem is vital to what we do. We're a one-horse town, right? We're a one-hospital city. And there is such leadership from Salem Health, from our system, our health system that we have here locally. We're very, very excited to have as a guest this morning Cheryl Wolf, who's the president and CEO of Salem Health. I want to welcome her up to the stage right now. So she's going to give us a couple-minute update on the amazing things that Salem Health is doing up and down the Willamette Valley. Please help me welcome Cheryl Wolf.
Well, good morning. Let's see what we have here. Oh, that's me. Okay, let's move it.
You can move the microphone too if you want to.
Okay. There we go. Is that better? Yeah. So those of you that were at the chamber meeting heard this already. So those of you that won't, though, it'll be some new information for you. It's an update from last year when we came and talked about not only was our community growing, but also our community is aging. So we have both factors going on. People that are aging drive inpatient hospital bed use. So we are in the process, and we started about 3 weeks ago, we broke ground on adding 150 new additional beds to Salem Hospital. So we are the largest private employer. Our economic impact, we have 5,000 employees, we have 800 physicians in our community, and we have nearly 500 volunteers that work at the hospital. Econ Northwest created a report about the impact of hospitals in their communities in the state of Oregon. They published it in May of 2019. Some highlights for our community are that the economic contribution of our hospital is $1.35 billion. The number of employees we have is equally matched in the community with an additional job. So we have over 5,000 employees, and we have close to 5,000 jobs that are a direct result of that. And a simple thing, even though we're a nonprofit, there are still areas where we pay taxes, and we, along with the other two small hospitals in Marion County, pay about $44 million in taxes. So as I said last year, we shared our plans on building the new patient care tower on the campus, which is right next to the newest building, Building A, and it'll actually at completion will look like one building. And we did break ground on this 200,000 square foot building about, as I said, about 3 weeks ago. And so then the expected first patient will be July of 2022. So pretty fast to get up a hospital building. And again, trying to take care of our community. That's what nonprofits do, and we're no different than that, even though we are a very large nonprofit. Once complete, then, the new building will be 7 stories. It will house 5 floors of beds. Each floor will have 30 beds for a total of 150, and that's expected to last us for the next 10 years. This is what the new building will look like as you enter our campus coming from I-5 on Mission Street. So the investment that we are making is $210 million for the building, and then an additional, we have to do seismic upgrades of our garage that's in that same vicinity, and that's another $25 million. 50% of the labor comes directly from the mid-Willamette Valley. In the contracting process, we were able to award $40 million to local contractors to help us build these new beds. We do more than hospital services. We try to figure out the most economical way for people in our community to receive care, because as you all know, the most expensive way is to be inside a hospital. And so recently, we have opened a primary care clinic and urgent care in Woodburn. We have about 115,000 emergency department visits every year, and we found that about 5,000 people were coming a year were coming from Woodburn for care in our emergency room that did not require emergency room care. So we're trying to give them access in their local clinic. And of course, we probably very publicly known at this point, we did just purchase 6 new primary care clinics in our community from WVP. Another indication of our partnerships, this is North Bank building with it, a facelift on the building, but what's more important is what's going on inside the building. And this is the first of 2 joint ventures with independent physicians in our community. And so the Salem Surgery Center will be at the North Bank location, and it's a partnership with Salem Clinic, Willamette Urology, and Willamette ENT. And that one is on the corner of Winter and Bellevue, if you're not familiar with that. And then the other, the second one, which we have not finalized the location for yet, is with Hope Orthopedics. And also in that group are some podiatrists and some general surgeons, and we're in the design phase on that. So that's our update, and hopefully that's a little less information than what I had at the chamber, but hopefully that gives you the flavor of the growth of your hospital and your community. Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you very much. Medical over the last 5 years has clearly been a driver construction-wise in our marketplace. So we appreciate the update. We hope that you would consider being here every single year, even if it's retread. Some projects, we give us updates. I think that's great stuff. One of the things we try to do every year is not just talk about the professional office market, but talk about the medical market as well. Last year we had actually a lot more sales than we have, and I think it's because largely in the last year the hospital's been so busy. Outside of their acquisitions of WVP, the top medical sale for the year we're going to talk about is, and this might be an obscure picture for many of you, but this is the former pain clinic that was on the corner of Skyline and Kubler, right across the street from both Kaiser Permanente and the doctor's clinic. This sold to an investor up in the Columbia Gorge and is now being leased by it's going to be the new home of South Salem Primary Care. Primary care, you know, is much needed in the valley, so that's going to be a great location for that, in addition to the fact that the buyer of this building got a great buy at only $203 a square foot. Our designers and contractor friends in the market will know to replace a building with the infrastructure this thing has is probably close to $400 a square foot, if not even higher than that. So welcome addition to South Salem. Top office sale. This is a big one. The institutional players know about Salem now. We're going to talk about that in a couple of different markets. Peregrine Realty Partners out of Newport Beach, we'll just say Orange County, came to the market in a big way. We're proud to work with them in the acquisition of the Creekside Corporate Center, which is just north, right on Mill Creek, north across from where the Costco is on Hawthorne, just north of Mission Street. This 4-building campus sold for just under $22 million and a 7.5 cap rate. We are not only excited to have helped them, but we're working with them ongoing on both leasing and property management. This is a record year for office building sales, and why? Why? Because of that rent growth that you saw. So I think there's some very astute buyers. One of them is here in this market. In this room today. I won't mention his name, but I think there's some very smart people who understand that the scarcity of office makes buying office buildings today on a value add basis a very, very good play. 1900 Hines Street, anchored by Maps Credit Union, sold during the summer. We were very privileged to be able to broker that deal at a 6.5 cap rate. Former Tycor, I still call it the Key Title Building, Tycor building down on the corner of High and Trade, is that right? Ferry? Sold to an investor as well, $3 million. Bunch of short-term tenants in this one, so a relatively high cap rate, but adjusted because the tenants are not long-term in that. And then another big one, the building at 17th and Mission, 1660 Oak Street, that used to be the home for both the Veterans Administration Clinic. It's also got IRS and some others. That building sold after the bottom 2 floors were fully leased by the state of Oregon. That cap rate says 7%. It actually sold at a 6%. That's a typo. That's a very low cap rate for our marketplace. Owner-user sales abounded this last year. So the former Red Cross building, we were very privileged to be able to help in the relocation of Red Cross to a building out on Hawthorne that used to be the Eldred Realty Remax building. They bought that, our friends at Rich Duncan Construction did a great job on that gut and remodel for ARC. Once they got settled, we went ahead and put the ARC building over in Orchard Heights on the market. And why did they move? They moved really, folks, to get on this side of the river. In case of a catastrophic event in our marketplace, the bodies are on this side of the river. So it was very important in a long-term outreach for ARC to be over here on this side of the river. That building sold for $1.9 million, a little bit of a depressed price because that buyer, who's also in this room, has to go out and obtain a little bit of additional parking for the building, which I believe he's done. That's a great buy at $100 a square foot. 3700 Portland Road, that's the former home for the Oregon State Police Department. We anticipated this has got a bunch of office component in it, could actually be retail as well. This actually closed. I think we talked a little bit about, there was a master lease this time last year. Our friend Eric Freeman from Freeman Motor Company went ahead and closed on this property. So great acquisition for him. $4 million for 40,000 total square feet at $100 a square foot. That's a really good buy out there. If you haven't been by that dealership, it's a great car experience. Additionally, we had our hand in the sale of the Capitol Press building. That sold to Salem Alliance Church, is now the new temporary home for the Salem Library. 525 Trade Street, the Vic building, very happy to announce George Grabenhorst represented the buyer on that, which is Western Oregon University. We're excited that Western Oregon is coming to downtown Salem with a campus, and SVN had the ability to help them make that dream a reality. They've been looking to do that for over a decade. And finally, 1515 through 1535 Liberty, kind of right across from St. Paul's Episcopal Church, nice little pseudo-medical building that sold for $1.9 million. So here's kind of a recap of the overall off-market sales. This is a big year. This is double what we did last year, almost $62 million in consideration. But the bigger thing that you have to take a look at right there is $156 a square foot average sales price. What does that mean? To go build a brand new office building in this market right now is at a minimum going to cost you $250 a square foot, and you may not even be able to do it for that. It's likely going to be $300 a square foot or maybe a little bit more. What we're telling our clients is that if you can buy a building that's got a little wear and tear on it, you're going to go in and gut and remodel it. Where you want to be buying buildings is right around this price, because when you're done and you in essence have a new building, you want to be in that $200 to $230 a square foot range, still under the price of what a new one. That average price was only $110 a square foot about 3 years ago, so prices are definitely going up. And to kind of draw this up, leasing update, the biggest lease, and we don't really have particulars yet that we can talk about, but the state of Oregon has executed a lease on a new build-to-suit. This is on land that is just north of, if you're familiar where the Mill Creek Hotel is, the Denny's. There's a bunch of land between that and Mill Creek. This is going to be a very, very high-end building between 30 and 35,000 square feet for the state of Oregon. It's called the Bridges at Hawthorne. This is going to be a great development. More news will be coming out on this relatively soon. And this will also be a really big year for the state, I am predicting. Now, the state is the biggest tenant we have in our marketplace. They lease, I did this number maybe 2 years ago, they're currently leasing around 1.6 to 1.7 million square feet of privately owned real estate in the greater Salem-Keizer area. Over the last year or so, locally, there's been one or two small requirements in the private sector, and that's largely because one of the other things that the state leasing agents have to do is fill up their own internal buildings that they own. They've had some pieces of the jigsaw puzzle moving the last couple of years, and so they've been really fortunate on that. Well, they're full now. And so any requirements, I think, are going to put another burden on this, on the office market coming forward in this next year. That's why as we kind of look to this next year, hey, it's laws of supply and demand. You don't need to be a genius here. Scarcity is real. Our supply of product is down. Our demand's going to be high. We're going to continue to see accelerated rents. I'm going to predict that our overall office rents are going to go up about 3%. Again, those Class A rents, I think, are going to go up in the 5 to 8% range once a year. Vacancy, there is nothing on the drawing board. Unless you're considering something that I don't know about. I think I called all of the architects in this marketplace, and I'm not getting the feeling of one brand new office building coming on market other than something I'm going to talk about in the retail that's a retrofit of an existing building. But in terms of new construction, I'm not seeing anything at this point in time. And demand continues to soar. So I think 2020 is going to continue to be a really, really good year for the office market. Again, scarcity is at play. I think there's some really good, if you can find an office building out there for under $150 a square foot, I think the way rents are going, that would make a very, very good value-add investment for that. So that's the update on my office report. One of the things that we're so excited about, this is a lush agricultural belt in the Willamette Valley, and a few years ago we started to bring that in. We're so excited that we not only have as a sponsor, but a participant this year, Northwest Farm Credit Services, and it's my pleasure to introduce Eric Henney, who's going to give us this year's update on the agricultural market. Thanks.
Thank you, Kurt, for that kind introduction of our company and myself. So first off, I'd just like to say thank you to Kurt Arthur and SVN for inviting not only myself, but Northwest Farm Credit to be one of your presenters today. It's been a great honor to put together these slides for an audience that we may not get to interact with as often as we do the food and fiber industry. So again, my name is Eric Henney. I've been working at Northwest Farm Credit Services for 14 years. I was born outside of Brooks, Oregon, and was raised on a small nursery operation. My wife and I bought a farm out of South Salem by Independence, where we operate a small livestock operation we sell locally here in the Salem Saturday market, and raise our 3 children there. Got my slides up. Sorry, get my space here. So Northwest Farm Credit Services is a member of the Farm Credit System. We encompass $272 billion worth of loan volume across the United States. Our organization has a focus on the food, fiber, and aquatic industries, and at some levels we also finance rural infrastructure and community needs. Northwest is one of 72 separately run cooperatives across the United States that cover Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. In Oregon, beyond our robust agricultural and timber portfolio, we have a leading young beginning farmer program and rural residential program that help us build off of our mission to improve the lives of our customers, employees, and the communities that we live. For the Willamette Valley, 2019 was highlighted by the emergence of hemp as a deregulated crop and the eventual bankruptcy of the NORPAC cooperative. However, the valley is home to hundreds of other crops and industries, and most of those continue to see positive economic indicators in 2019 and leading into 2020. For perspective, while hemp, hazelnuts, wine, blueberries, and nursery have been significant industries in this past year, grass seed continues to be the largest crop by volume. The blue bars on the graph above represent the turf grass seeds, but they do not represent or do not also include the fine annual ryegrass, blues, bent, orchard, and other grass seeds that are also grown in the valley, which only further go to show the impact grass seed has on our region. The turf and forage grass seed industry is regularly one of Oregon's top 5 commodities at over $500 million of gross receipts to our Oregon farms. Given the scale of the grass seed industry, it is the default to which many decisions are made in the region, from the crop mix to real estate demand. This chart above me shows the average price per pound for perennial ryegrass in blue, the average price for tall fescue in red. The black line represents the total acres grown of both. The gray lines represent the past recessions of the U.S. economy. As you can see on the right, the level of stability over the last 9 years in grass seed is unparalleled. The decline in the, is unparalleled. And not only the price, the level of the price, but also the level of acres that have been able to maintain. The decline in the acres over the historical highs are in part to 3 factors. Number one, in the late 90s and early 2000s, not only in the United States but across the globe, there was a massive increase in the development of golf courses and large turf spaces. That has been on a decline over the past 2 decades. Secondly, there was a large overproduction of all ornamental and grass seeds leading up to the 2006 and 2007 housing boom that led to the Great Recession. And lastly, there's been increased competition from other production regions across the globe. That stability in the grass seed that we just saw is reflected in the core earnings that we see amongst our customer base, and those earnings have led to a steady reduction in debt. The industry has remained cautious and has learned their lessons from the recent recession, and we have seen good growth in all of growers' equities. While we've seen this improved margin amongst our grower base and decline in debt, there is also an equal level of compression among margins as growers face regulatory pressure, increasing labor costs, and other rising costs, while revenues have not been able to keep pace. One trend that we've observed in this debt reduction is in part being driven by a lack of leverage purchases. Question that we have is this part due to lack of opportunity or lack of willingness to take risk? Many operations are a maturing business that have stable ownership, and this has also helped to lead to the strength in the balance sheet that you see above. One comment that I'll add to this is that these level of debt to assets that you see in the agricultural sector are significantly lower than probably most of you are used to seeing in your industries. One of those is that agriculture is a very capital intensive industry with low margins. And so in order to be successful and be sustainable over the ups and downs that we face in a commodity driven cycle, you need to have a lot of equity built into your balance sheet to survive those cycles. The following 2 slides were generated by our internal appraisal department, and they reflect sales that have been analyzed in the Willamette Valley. These sales have been allocated to 2 land classes, and they exclude the influence of improvements, home sites, and other factors that may have contributed to the total sale price. If you can't see all the details on this slide, this is specifically to irrigated land class and is representative of sales of over 40 acres. One of the reasons because of that is under 40 acres, we tend to see a lot of influence of urban or rural need, and so in order to understand the commodity drive of the price per acre, we exclude those from this data set. The blue bars represent the average sale per acre. The red lines represent the number of sales that we see in a given year. In your booklet, you should see copies of both of these 2 slides. If not, feel free to ask me any questions after the presentation. Nursery grass seed, wine, Christmas trees, hops represent nearly $2 billion in annual revenues to Oregon farms and are driven in large part by the disposable income of the U.S. consumer. As the U.S. economy has strengthened over the past decade, land values have reflected the improved earnings of these commodities. Growers' investment into hazelnuts has increased their desire to expand their own land holdings, which have further helped support the increases that we see in not only irrigated land class, but also in non-irrigated. Lastly, in the last decade, we've also seen the entrance of outside capital into Oregon. They have a focus on high-value irrigated cropland, and they also are interested in the development of blueberries and hazelnuts. And I'll also add to this that we've seen an increased interest in outside capital into our well-known and well-appreciated Pinot Noir market, as well as Southern Oregon into other reds. This influx of capital and strong earnings have created an interesting paradigm, as interest in acquiring land has remained strong, but the willingness to sell these assets have been tempered. As we've seen on this slide and the prior one, there's been a dramatic reduction in the number of sales of ag land in the past year and a half. One of the key observations that I see in the region is this is largely being driven by a lack of inventory that's offered on the market. Farming in the region has been profitable, but there's a tightening of the marginal return per acre that is reducing the appetite of buyers to pay increasing prices. Returns on equity and alternative investments to this group have also tempered their demand to pay higher prices. So while there's interest in acquiring land, there's not as much interest to continue to push prices higher. At that same time, though, unmotivated owners in the space, their good earning levels have increased their expectations to have further pricing increases. So in summary, what does that mean? What it means is folks want to buy, folks want to sell, but the people who want to sell want way more money than the folks are willing to pay for it at this time. So it's an interesting line that we have. Notable sales that we've seen over the past few years tend to revolve around landlord succession, and on a rare cases when the operations don't have a next generation intent on farming, and that ownership is looking to divest out of agriculture and move into other investments. I mentioned briefly that there's been a lot of stability in one of our key commodities, grassy, but I also noted that there's been some compression in margin. This has created a level of anxiety among farmers as they look towards the future. You have to play the long game in agriculture. You have a lot of capital at risk and not a lot of free cash flow. That narrowing margin has led to the chase of the hunt for new margins. Growers have demonstrated a willingness to deploy capital into the promise of higher returns or a more stable long-term outcome. These following figures that I'll show you are rough estimates based on the cost of developing the crops and are not associated with any potential land transaction that occurred. Since 2009, we've seen over $9 million in the expansion of hop yards, $85 million in the development of new blueberry groves. Since 2012, over 50,000 acres of hazelnuts have gone in up and down the I-5 corridor at roughly $230 million in capital outlays. I would note, in large, I don't have empirical data, but in generalities, most of this has been done out of cash and not leverage. And lastly, in this category, since 2012, the expansion of vineyards at $330 million. If you hearken back to one of my original slides, you'll note that the acres involved in these last two industries are still relatively small, but recognizing the development of that infrastructure is much higher with the promise of better returns. Lastly, nobody in agriculture, anybody who's even grossly associated with agriculture, can't help but talk about this number here. Hemp acres in Oregon have been registered at over 60,000 for 2019, while the amount of acres that were actually planted and successfully harvested are significantly lower. There's no getting around the fact that this industry and those that came to Oregon to participate in put in well over $200 million in growing a crop in 1 year. Put in perspective, look at the numbers that took a decade above them to be generated and what was done on the speculation and hope of earnings that could come from this new deregulated crop. Based on our experience, we see that growing and the subsequent machine harvesting of that crop average around $7,000 an acre, and drying costs are another $6,000 to $10,000. I'll tell you that the development of 1 acre of hazelnuts over 5 years costs approximately $5,000 to $7,000 for a farm to generate, but there's no revenue off that orchard during that time. Regardless of the actual acres that were harvested, it is based on my estimate and conversations with customers and my own personal experience that less than 10% of producers that grew hemp in 2019 have received any meaningful payment to date. Lastly, in my slides with you today, the impact of NORPAC on our local economy is still unfolding. I will tell you that the losses felt by those directly involved with the co-op are undoubtful. One of the short-term questions, though, beyond the economic impact of folks involved with this cooperative's failure, is what are the impacts of the acres and the disposition of those vegetable acres that have been in our valley the last couple years. The slide that you see above me is a compilation of data provided by NASS, which is via the ODA and USDA statistical website. The orange bar at the top are acres of sweet corn in Oregon, and the blue bar represents green beans. Based on this data, we can see that the reduction in bean and corn acres in Oregon has been an ongoing affair. It is assumed that much of the impact of lost acres in Oregon to other production regions of the world has actually already incurred or is already baked into the data. Based on recent conversations with processors, the amount of acres being sought for 2020 look to be consistent with those that have been in the past 2 years. Time will tell if there'll be a resurgence in vegetable acres in the Willamette Valley or if we'll continue to see a drawdown. Overall, again, I'll summarize in the standpoint that the impact of this recent development is there, but it is one small piece of a very large and robust agricultural portfolio in the Willamette Valley. Thank you again for your time. Thank you, Kurt, for allowing Farm Credit and myself to present to you today. And to the extent to which you folks in this room interact with agriculture, I hope that you'll think of Northwest Farm Credit Services in the future. Thank you. At this point, would you please help me welcoming Eric Anderson, president of SEDCOR. He will provide to you today the industry market overview, or excuse me, the industrial market overview. Thank you.
From Eric with a C to Eric with a K. Kurt, thank you. Congratulations on another successful SVN event. Thank you for including SEDCOR in that. First, a little bit about my organization. Our mission is to leverage public and private partnerships to successfully grow and retain and attract high-value jobs and capital investment to the Mid-Willamette Valley. While economic development is mostly associated with business recruitment, which is an important part of SEDCOR's work, most of our activity is working with businesses that are already here. With business retention and expansion managers in Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties, we are a resource for businesses seeking to invest and grow in the region. We have an informal motto at SEDCOR. When we talk to someone and find out that they have a request or a need, we always say, we know a guy, or in some cases, we know a gal. But that reflects our ability to make connections with the right resources to help businesses grow in the community. Among our growing businesses we worked with this year, over the past year, Marion Ag Services, Hopmere Cold Storage, FS Oil, Ram Steel, Amazon, and quite a few breweries, wineries, and distilleries. And with Jose here, I'll also say cideries, and we're excited about your investment with La Familia in downtown Salem. So. Another role that SEDCOR has is to assist companies seeking available industrial buildings or properties for expansion or relocation. We receive requests from partners like Business Oregon or directly from a network of site selectors we work with to help companies locate in this region. Working with our city and county partners, SEDCOR presents properties or buildings that meet those clients' specific needs. The Salem region began the last decade feeling the lingering effects of the recession, with an industrial vacancy rate of nearly 13% at the end of 2010. At the end of 2019, that figure is 3.6%, reflecting the increased demand and relative lack of supply. CoStar forecasts the region's industrial vacancy rate to be relatively stable in the 4 to 5% range through the year 2024. On the horizon, a relative large increase in speculative properties in the Portland metro region may impact demand in the Salem market. Of the 3 million square feet of spec space currently under construction in the Portland metro area, nearly 80% of that is available for lease. We talked about supply and demand again. Following the law of supply and demand, our industrial supply decreased while demand for space increased, so just like with office space, prices have increased. The average market rent per square foot in 2019 was $7.75, increasing nearly 50% since the beginning of the decade. CoStar forecasts that industrial rents will be relatively stable over the next few years, growing to $8.27 by the end of 2024. While the growth rate in rent has slowed a bit, Salem remains at a price advantage when compared to Portland Metro, where the average rent is 15% higher at $9 a square foot. Once again, according to CoStar, the average time it takes for an industrial building to be leased in the Salem area is 4.9 months. While this has gone up a little bit from the recent low in 2017, this is a significant decrease from January of 2015 when that figure was over 2 years. It's hard to believe. Vacant inventory is up nearly 50% over last year, but available space is steady. As you'll see in the next few slides, there continue to be exciting happenings in the local industrial market coming on board in 2020. The South Salem Business Park, Pacific Northwest Properties is preparing to break ground on this 2-building property called the South Salem Business Park. 70,000 square feet total. It's expected to be divided into 10 to 12 spaces, flex space that could go as low as 3,000 square feet for a variety of uses. That's really the kind of space we're getting a lot of interest and demand for in the area. Pac Trust continues its investment in the Mill Creek Corporate Business Center. Raw Advantage is moving into its 55,000 square foot building there, and the 62,000 square foot building 3 is ready for tenants. We're happy to hear that buildings 5 and 6 will be coming online in the next year, and that will make over 250,000 square feet of new space available from Pac Trust in the market, which is great for us for marketing. Gensco Inc. is a regional wholesale distributor of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment and supplies. They're building a new facility on Fairview Industrial Drive in Southeast Salem. While there have been high-profile projects at Mill Creek, as you all know, Henningsen, Amazon, Pac Trust that we just talked about, there still are sites available. We continue to attract a lot of interest in the Mill Creek Corporate Center. We're actively working with a variety of business leads, as well as in the food products business, agriculture, warehousing, and they're all attracted to that site due to its shovel-ready nature and its access to I-5. Last year at this time, we were getting ready to announce an exciting tenant for the former Panasonic building, and we are actively working with the Reich brothers who own the building from New York to help fund improvements. That deal didn't quite work out, but fortunately a new deal came along right behind it. And as that building was built specifically for Panasonic and Sanyo, quite a bit of interior and a little bit of exterior work needed to be done to accommodate a new use. But the Amazon sort station is expected to open shortly and provide final point delivery for customers within a 50-mile radius. And I think they're actively looking for drivers if you want to be driving one of those vans around. As I mentioned, shovel-ready industrial land with quick accessibility to Interstate 5 are common requests that we get from leads looking at the Mid-Willamette Valley. Due to its proximity to Portland, the I-5 Logistics Center in Woodburn, it continues to garner attention from the industrial sector because it meets both requirements. 108 acres of shovel-ready land, minutes from I-5. It's said to be the only site along the I-5 corridor able to accommodate up to 1.9 million square feet in building size. And here are a couple projects from other areas of the SEDCOR region that we're excited about. The first phase of the Independence Landing redevelopment opened in September of last year. It's a boutique 75-room hotel, the Hotel at Independence, and that's part of a mixed-use development, including residential apartments, townhouses, a little bit of commercial. The ballpark price for the 3 phases is around $50 million. Gresham-based Tacola Properties won a competitive bidding process to redevelop a former gravel site on the Willamette River. And once completed, this project is expected to garner about $5 or $4 million in income, visitor spending from people coming into the area, as well as a couple $1 million in local spending. And Hopefully folks have already gone over there and checked out the restaurant. Mint Valley Paper, it's in the Godsey Road industrial area in Dallas, is a $300 million potential investment, expected to create more than 120 family wage jobs. We've been working with this company for a couple years now, have weekly meetings with them. We keep waiting to be able to say that we have the official announcement, but we're hoping for the first quarter of 2020. Just one quick site from Yamhill County that is getting some recent attention. The former West Rock Mill ceased production in 2015. It came on the market finally last year and is attracting strong interest from developers. It's a 220-acre site, 100 of which is developable land, and it also plays a significant role in the city's waterfront master plan. Redevelopment of the site will be key to economic revitalization for the city of Newburgh and its waterfront. And Eric alluded to NORPAC, but certainly that's been the big economic development story in the region for us over the year. In this past January, cold storage giant Lineage Logistics bid to acquire all of NORPAC's Oregon assets. That bid was approved, and subsequent agreements are in place with Northwest Vegco, which is part of Oregon Potato Company, to occupy one or more of the facilities that they have in Marion County. There's currently activity, as you know, here back in the Salem facility. Sedcor's been working with Lineage as they identify next steps for hopefully new tenants coming on board in their facilities in the coming year. You can see there's a lot of land there, a lot of building available, and we look forward to working with them to refill that space and bring back those jobs. We've also been working with the impacted growers. As Eric said, there's a lot of folks in the supply chain that are affected by NORPAC's closure, and we can pretty much grow anything in the Willamette Valley, so let's try to figure out how we can best fortify and expand our supply chain into the future. Thank you very much for your time today. Once again, thank you to Kurt and SVN, and I guess I'm turning it back to you to talk about retail.
Thanks, Eric. Let me give Eric and his team at Sedcor some big kudos. If you're not in the ag business, you really don't understand the impact of what's happened at NORPAC. We're very privileged to be working with Lineage on that side. Sedcor has done such a good job. They've really been the conduit for the growers. I know that Eric, Nick, that team at Sedcor has done has had a number of opportunities for those growers to get together in one room, and they've really been a catalyst to keep things, I think, calm and working with those entities that are coming in to assume those operations. So kudos to you guys, not only the work you're doing in Marion County, but Polk and Yamhill as well. So you're doing a really good job. Retail. Those of you who know me, I'm not a retail guy, right? But it's fascinating. I love retail. I'm not an active broker in the retail standpoint, but I love doing this update because I love strapping my headset on and making my calls to talk to folks about what's really happening up and down the Willamette Valley retail-wise. So I've got a couple of interesting themes, but let's first start on a kind of a national level. When you think about retail, what do you think about? I asked the question I'm going to do this again. See if the same person doesn't raise their hand. If you have bought something online in the last 12 months, please raise your hand. No, if you have not bought anything online in the last 12 years, raise your hand. Good. Kevin Cameron didn't raise his hand this year. So that's what we think of when we talk about retail. Right? That's what they don't deliver to Detroit, do they? That's what we think of when we think about retail, right? We think about Amazon. We think of and look at the expansion in our market and virtually every market in the United States. We think about online retailer presence, right? That traditional brick and mortar real estate is dead. That's the general assumption, right? It's not true. Retail sales in the United States actually went up 4% last year. It's a very surprising fact. There's a line that says it's not in-store versus online. It's not. It's all retail. Interesting part of the top 50 retailers, online retailers, virtually every single one of them have significant bricks and mortar real estate exposure. Industry-wide online sales make up, get a load of this, only 10% of all retail sales in the United States. You think companies are closing, right? We hear these Macy's, Toys R Us, we hear all these announcements of all these retailers closing constantly. What we don't forget is that that's happened our whole lives. And the reality is in the retail world today, for every one company that you hear of closing, 5.2 are opening. Retail is actually thriving. And why is it thriving? It's because the smart retailers have learned this new phrase called omni-channeling. A year ago, I had no flippin' idea what that meant, right? Well, I do now. And omni-channeling, for any of you that are in marketing out there, is this brilliant concept of we don't need to just be online. We don't need to just be a bricks and mortar store. We don't need to just be social media, but those three platforms have to interact with each other. Omni-channeling is the ability to take data from those three specific ways of targeting client and accumulating just terabytes of data to be able to work more efficiently with that customer to provide a better shopping experience for us, better touch points. When Eric Templeton goes and buys a pair of shoes online, and then he goes on Facebook 2 minutes later and that pair of shoes is haunting him because he didn't buy them, that's omni-channeling, okay? Let's kind of take a look now locally on where we're at. And Salem's in a rough place right now. We really are. We're not seeing any expansion, kind of like I talked about at the office. We're not seeing any expansion product-wise inside the retail sector. And our absorption factors for the first time in a long time for the year were actually negative. They're pretty much at break even at this point. So it's not a very healthy number. That being said, it's still a pretty tight statistical number. If you take a look at the vacancy rate, because we have no product forthcoming, that vacancy rate right now is well below 3% in the general Salem-Keizer area. And actually, if you looked at the entire mid-Willamette Valley, it's down below 2% because there's markets out there around. The Dallases, the Woodburns, the Silvertons of the world just have almost no space available at this point in time. So general theory in commercial real estate is if the market factors shove your vacancy rate down below 5%, it's time to go build. Under construction, you can start to see that towards the tail end of last year, there's really very little, if anything, on the drawing boards at this point, which tells us we're going to be, again, in that scarcity mode for a while. I thought about this for an awfully long time because we do have some very positive things that I'm going to talk about, but what are the real headlines that all of us are talking about when we open this event with? It really is our homelessness problem that we have in this town. And this is not an issue that's just unique to Salem, right? It's Portland, it's Seattle. If you have not had a chance, my shameless plug, to watch a video on YouTube, watch this. It's called Seattle is Dying. Take an hour, get yourself away, watch this video, and it has some very creative ways to look at this problem and potential resolutions for this problem. But it's a big deal, and why do we say that? If we kind of take a look at this event last year, I talked about the fact that we just had a couple of great investors who are in this room, big investment partnership that are in this room today, that invested millions of dollars in acquiring the Nordstrom building this past year after Nordstrom's abruptly left town. I still wish they would have tried a Nordstrom Rack before they closed their doors, right? But they didn't do that. So these guys came in, not only invested millions in the building, but stood ready to invest millions more in our downtown to make this thing a really viable retrofit and another positive addition to our downtown. But a few months later, where are we? We're inundated. This was middle to the end of the summertime, early fall, right in front of the Arches building. And then these poor guys who spent millions of dollars in this building have an encampment right in front of their building and are forced to have to put up some fencing outside to keep this from happening. Right after that, we get the announcement that TJ Maxx, almost kitty corner across the street, is also going to relocate out of downtown. We wonder why. Strong issues, we've talked about this. Strong issues take strong leadership. And I'm going to give a shameless plug for our mayor. This is difficult. This is why I'm going to also say we need a change of leadership. I went down, I didn't want to get up here and just talk about what was in the Statesman Journal. I wanted to get down and really understand the effect. So the last couple of days, I've spent a few hours down talking to retailers. If you really want to understand the impact that this is having, go talk to Sandy and Bikes, go talk to the T-Mobile shop, go talk to John Gross Interior Design, go, all of them. Go talk to them and understand. Talk to the T-Mobile guys that say, nobody comes in their shop when the sun goes down. after the sun goes down. They can sit in there for 3 hours twiddling their thumbs. No one will walk in their store. You can talk to John Gross Interiors and ask him what he's had to clean up on his sidewalk on almost a daily basis. It's truly impactful. It's time for us to have leadership in place that's going to make very, very strong decisions, tough decisions, but fair and humane decisions so that we can get on top of this. And please get out there and support guys like Jose that are going to take up their time. And where you have extra time, my friend, I don't know, but I am so grateful that you're stepping up and going to run for city council. Thank you. We have some great things. I don't want you to think that that's all doom and gloom, but we need to address that to get Catalyst going back on the north end of downtown. Kitty corner across the street from us had a great dialogue with Vanessa Sturgeon. She put together this Opportunity Zone Fund to be able to acquire the Marion Auto Garage across the street. This is a brand new all-suite hotel concept. They've done the demolition. They're going to start construction this year. We're excited for that. We also have another couple great things happening, involvement, a lot of people in this room, CB2, CD Redding Construction, Dalkey Construction, all involved in the construction now of both the YMCA, 68,000 square feet plus at $26 million construction cost, and the new Union Gospel, which will provide 300 beds to hopefully be another conduit to help us be a part of that solution for the homelessness problem at a cost of $15 million. 2019 brought a great new group who believes in Salem in Cumberland Holdings. Cumberland came in, they started about this time last year. I think we talked about one slide. They came in and aggressively bought the Reed Opera House, and then they also bought 120 Commercial Street, which is now we would know as Masonry, the brand new Masonry Grill, which is great. But also during the year, they bought the Sunny Slope Shopping Center out in South Salem. They saw a value add with the growth of rooftops out in that area, and that's a great acquisition. They pumped $21,400,000 into the Salem invest. They invested that much in Salem in 2019. Now we got some updates. The biggest one, and I still haven't been there, the In-N-Out Burger. Raise your hand if you went and ate at the In-N-Out Burger since it opened. A lot of hands. Ladies and gentlemen, the #1 first 30-day opening in that chain's history. They sold over 55,000 burgers in 30 days. That's somewhere in the 1,600 to 1,700 burgers a day range. Kaiser, I thought you were a little healthier than that. Come on. No, great addition. Gosh, the fervor out there has been great, and what a great catalyst for Kaiser Station. Also out north, the acquisition, we talked a little bit that this might be in the works last year, but the finalization of Cascade Farm and Outdoors, this will be a theme that I'll get to here in a minute, that took the former Roth's grocery store out at Kaiser Square. Lancaster has got a ton of activity, and this was exciting for me. So let's talk about all that's happening out in the Lancaster area. A year and a half ago, the Toys R Us the Toys R Us store closed. That's a 47,000 square foot facility. I'm excited to announce, even though I can't talk about details at this point, that property is under contract. That will be a conversion of that, I'm told, not retail. My guess, this is just a guess, it's likely. I think there's a strong demand still out in that area for medical. We'll see. I don't know that, but I'm excited to see what entails for that building. I know there's a great new design underway for that. And what many people in this market would still call the Lancaster Mall, the Willamette Town Center, this group of ownerships, I had a great conversation this week with John Hummel. John, combined with his partners at Deacon up in Vancouver, they do an amazing job as the ownership. They have a very forward-thinking platform here. And what I can tell you at this point in time is that Mod Pizza has announced that they are going to Willamette Town Center. I can tell you that Crumble Cookies, which is a brand new, great, fast-growing concept, is coming there as well. Also excited to announce that they are building a new pad site building up on Lancaster between the main entryway to the mall and where Applebee's is. They're doing a new pad site building for a brand new Panera that'll be right on Lancaster. I'm also excited to tell you, while I can't announce names at this point in time, but if you think about an earlier discussion, you'll figure this out. Sears has been leased. Excited about that, and it'll be a different look. So what they're going to do out there, if you're familiar with that property, they're going to be knocking down the current DMV. They're going to be moving some folks around, and that angle from where the current DMV is will be the entryway to the new user that will be taking that Sears. So amazing things, not only on the horizon in the next, say, 18 months at Willamette Town Center. They shared with me a master plan for their vision 10 years from now for that property, and it is unbelievable. Truly a lifestyle experience center. Also in Lancaster, I'm very excited to announce the leasing of the 117,000 square foot Shopco. I had a long conversation with the owner of the tenant, the company that leased this, and he gave me the authority to announce their company, Coastal Farm and Ranch, has finally found a location in Salem. We know that they've been looking for an awfully long time. I think this is a dynamite location for them, especially with access to Highway 22. They are very, very excited. They had been looking for a long time at the Kmart building, but lots of issues came forward with that property. Super excited for them at this location. Lastly, that on a slide standpoint, I'll tell you, if you have not driven by and seen it lately on I-5, right next to the Santiam Regal Theater, you'll see the development of the new CarMax, which will be open by the end of the first quarter of 2020. Not on this slide, but I had great conversations with Dennis Oram. This is public record at this point. The old Capital Auto property we sold a number of years ago to just a fantastic guy by the name of Dennis Oram, who owns Jerry's Home Center based out of Eugene, Springfield. One of these days when ODOT gets their act together and they can get, the city and ODOT can figure out full access to that, and we hope it's by the end of this year. Dennis hopes it's by the end of this year. You're gonna see construction start on a brand new 260,000 square foot Jerry's Home Improvement Center. It's gonna be fantastic. South Salem, Planet Fitness. I talked a little bit about the acquisition of this building a year ago, and the acquisition price had a 2 in front of it. They put Planet Fitness into the building. They bought this empty building, put Planet Fitness in, put a long-term lease in place, sold it as an investment property. New buyer paid almost $5 million. Very good investment for that group that bought that property. And here's another update that hasn't really gotten a whole lot of press at this point in time. So all of you are familiar with the issues going on with Costco, their desired move out to the corner of Battle Creek and Kubler. Well, about a week and a half ago, this has been kicked up the appeal ladder to the Land Use Board of Appeals. About 10 days ago, the Land Use Board of Appeals kicked this back down and remanded it back down to City Council, and we are very hopeful and optimistic that our current council members will see the wisdom in this and proactively work to get the final approvals so Costco can move forward with their acquisition and development out there on the Pac Trust site. Other markets to talk about, the Point in Glen Creek, which is Deacon's Construction over at the corner of Glen Creek and Wallace, has come to fruition. We talked a little bit about the pre-leasing last year. They've welcomed Gilgamesh, Mud Bay, On Point Credit Union, DaVita Dialysis and General Dental to that property. There are still a couple other very small inline spaces of under 2,000 square feet. That's a great design. You kind of look at it and think funky access off of side streets or back up off of Glen Creek, but you know, I've driven there a number of times. It works, and it's a great little center. The Gilgamesh over there is a great addition to West Salem, certainly. Downtown, lots of stuff going on to downtown. I was talking to Dana, the general manager, the other day, what a lot of us will still call the old machismo mouse. They're in final negotiations, hopefully, to bring a new restaurant tenant in there to Salem Center. But they're struggling, folks. They're having a hard time bringing new tenants to that building, and until we craft that homeless solution to make some absolute impacts on that inroads, that property is going to suffer. That property went through foreclosure. The lender is back in possession of this. They have what they hope to be no more than a 30-month plan on the rehab and resell of this asset, but there's no question we need to kind of get on top of what's going on down there so that they can get a little more proactive with their tenants. Chronic Tacos, great new addition to 260 Liberty Building. Fork 40 Food Hall down the street here on State Street. Great, just a really creative idea where you're going to have multiple vendors inside of one location. You can walk in. I don't know the exact count at this point in time, but it's to be great to have a central seating area. This is all over Portland now, and have multiple options inside for you to be able to choose from. And lastly, as we talked about, the Masonry Grill that just opened at 120 Commercial Street. Fantastic. My wife and I have eaten there a couple of times. Overall summary of the retail market. So our inventory in Salem retail buildings is around 21 million square feet. Our market rents are currently around $14.72 a square foot. That is actually down. It's not down substantially, a couple of pennies a square foot, so relatively stable, but it's not growing is the big one. Under construction square feet, 137,000 square feet, that is way low. We need to be 250 to 400,000 square feet on an annual basis with the population growth that we're seeing. As we talked about, rent growth has actually gone down a little bit. I expect that to change this next year. Our net absorption is down. I expect that to change this next year. Our market sales price is $142 a square foot. If you take a look at what we're getting in rents and look at that number, if you're able to make some systematic acquisitions like the Planet Fitness building out in South Salem, there are tremendous returns to be had. We've got a vacancy factor that's under 3%. Time for us to build. And last but not least, the one positive thing is our actual sales volume of, and again, I think value-added investors are seeing that Salem is a great place to invest. And we've seen the actual 12-month sales go up. Last year was about $95 million, this year about $120 million. So that's it for the retail focus. Now I want to invite up to the platform Katie Bands. Katie's with Powell Bands Valuation, and she does a tremendous job, and we thank her so much for coming and giving the apartment market to everybody. So thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Kurt, for inviting me to attend again today. This event is one of the best events we have all year, and I can't believe how much amazing information has already been shared with us this morning. As an appraiser, I'm frantically taking notes because rather than having to call, a myriad of different folks, Kurt and the rest of the team up here, are sharing the information with all of us. So thank you so much. Thank you also to the rest of the SVN team for putting this together. It is a lot of work, and they do that for us, for our community, to help us get better and keep pace with what is actually going on. So again, I'm Katie Bands. I am co-owner of Powell Bands Valuation here in Salem. We are a commercial real estate appraisal firm with 13 employees, 10 appraisers, and we appraise everything under the sun except for single-family homes. So I guess let's get started. So with regard to the multifamily market, our firm conducts an annual survey, and we've been working hard to get that completed. The data collected in our survey was gathered during the fourth quarter of 2019, so this is hot off the press, great information. The multifamily market is doing great. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, but vacancy still remains low. Last year we had a slight bump up, but this year average overall vacancy is back down 2.13%. That's far, far below the industry benchmark, which is around 5%. Within that average, we have mature, which is pre-1990, mature units registering 2.68%, with contemporary units even lower at 1.7%. There's nominal turnover, and similar to last year, wait lists are still wait lists are still commonplace for available units. The forecast going forward is for increased vacancy a little bit as some new product comes to market. However, we'll still be far below the 5% benchmark. With regard to rents, as the chart here shows, rents increased across the board. I don't think that's a big surprise. The chart illustrates rents by unit type. So we have studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bed, 1 bath, 2 bed, 2 bath, and 3 bedroom units. And of note here is that the average 2 bed, 1 bath unit exceeded $1,000 per month in 2019. So that's kind of a threshold. We had been below $1,000 a month up until now, so we have crossed that. But one thing to consider is that the average rent in Salem Keizer remains roughly 35% lower than in the Portland metro area. So with all of these new retail projects that are coming, thank you, Kurt, for sharing all the information, the new In and Out, all of the various projects. Amazon is another one. People that haven't typically come to the Salem Keizer market area are now coming here to live. Rent appreciation. So last year, this was a big topic, or it has been every year, I should say. The 2019 average rent appreciation was only 5%. So rents are still going up, but this is quite a bit lower than the rent control legislation that was enacted last year, which is 7% plus inflation. So just kind of as a guide, between 15 and 18, rent appreciation across all unit types measured roughly 10 and 14%. So the additional inventory that is slated to come online in the next few years will also temper the rent increases. One thing to note is that during our survey period, we talked to a lot of property owners and property managers, and they said that rents are generally keeping pace. But one thing that has happened is in older units where they were not keeping pace with increasing rents over time, those properties are now struggling. Developing inventory. Since 2016, we've developed almost 2,000 new multifamily units, or at least they've been permitted. Developers remain confident about this new product, despite the rent caps due to that 15-year grace period. All new units are being absorbed quickly. The average absorption is 11 units per month. However, I think this is a little low, in all honesty, and you'll see when I get to some of the new projects, they're experiencing absorption of 20 units a month, 30 units a month. These new projects are absorbing most of their new units before construction is complete. So in addition to the new product that has already been built, we have 2,000 additional units that are in various stages of planning and construction. 604 units are currently being developed, and another almost 1,400 are in planning, review, and permitting. Of those, I did see at least one project that is affordable housing based. As far as the developing projects, there are several going on, and I've just noted a few here. Most notably is the CoStar on State Street project. This is in conjunction with our local Mountain West Investment Group. This is in the CBD, the former McMahon site. 148 units, six stories, sorry. Primarily studio units with a few 1 and 2 bedrooms in for good measure. There will be street level retail. And like the mayor opened with, it is so exciting to see this big crane in downtown Salem. Our office is just kind of kitty corner across the alley, and it's been a great experience watching the construction from the ground up. So seeing how they actually do excavate, all of the supports. This week they poured the concrete decking, which I had kind of always wondered how that was done. So it's been fun to see, a great learning experience for our team too. If you haven't taken the time to look at it, I would definitely recommend it. Mays Landing in Southeast Salem, this is off of Mission. 6 buildings, 96 units, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom unit types. This was recently completed, or they're at least putting the finishing touches on, and they are in lease up now. White Oak Apartments, this is an exciting project. This is Montana Development out in Southeast Salem. It will be 9 buildings, 111 units with 1 and 2 bedroom unit types. They will have a clubhouse, a pickleball court, which I had not heard of that before, an apartment project, but I think it's a great and innovative addition. They broke ground in November of 19, and as I mentioned before, this is an example of a project that is doing a rolling occupancy as the certificate of occupancies are granted. So once they get the final okay, here's your certificate of occupancy for a single building, then this developer goes ahead, leases those units, and they're able to generate income while the project is still being developed. Super smart. Okay, another big project, if you haven't been out to West Salem to see this one, I would highly recommend it. Acero West Salem is the name. 31 buildings, 312 units, 1 and 2 bedroom unit types. They have an outdoor pool. Looks nice. I was out there kind of in the evening taking this picture, and it looked great. They have a community center with a fitness center, common area kitchen, 2 studio guest rooms, a conference room, and they began lease up in May of last year. And according to the property representative earlier this week, they are approximately 60% leased to date, with the remainder pre-leasing. And this is another example. They're still under construction out there, but they are absorbing the units as they get the buildings finished. And just based on my rough calculations, they are absorbing roughly 20 units a month. So they're exceeding that average that I mentioned. They anticipate completion in June of this year. All right, also in West Salem is Riverbend Center. This is a project that the land was offered for sale for several years and got snatched up recently. It's right at the northwest corner of Wallace Road and Riverbend Road. It's going to be a mixed-use project, 48 apartment units, 1 and 2 bedroom unit types. So I don't know if you've been keeping track or not, but not very many 3 bedrooms being developed right now. In addition to the apartment portion, there will be 2 detached retail buildings totaling just under 12,000 square feet. And again, as you can see, this is currently under construction. All right, on to sales. So in 2019, the average market price was roughly $120,000 per unit. So as far as an average price goes, that's outstanding. It seems like just a few years ago, we were up here, or perhaps my dad was up here speaking, and the average price was $50,000 per door, or $60,000 per door. So prices are still going up. Of those last year, the highest price was roughly $172,000 per unit, and that was at the Newcastle Apartments out in Northeast Salem. The average for contemporary complexes, now again, those are complexes built 1990 and later. So in the next few years, we may need to adjust our definition of contemporary, but in any case, for now, that average was roughly $146,000, with the average mature units at roughly $105,000 per unit. Average cap rate is essentially unchanged, but still below 6%, measuring 5.9% last year. One other thing I did want to mention, it's not on the slide, but as far as the rent control legislation goes, last year I had speculated, how is this going to affect our market? Will this impact the demand for multifamily properties as far as investments go? And the good news is it really has not had much of an impact, at least for newer product. So those contemporary projects that have market-driven rents in place are still selling. There really has not been any decline. The only item of note is in the older, mature projects that were built, between the 50s and 70s or 80s, where perhaps they were owner-managed and maybe they had long-term tenants and the owner-manager wasn't raising rents annually. In those projects, we are seeing less demand. There just isn't that upside income potential to potential investors because that income stream is capped, essentially. So they have to wait longer to get the return on their investment. So that is one item or one area of note that has been impacted. All right, notable transactions over the last year. There were several, but I picked 3. We've got Claxter Park Apartments in Salem. This property sold in January, 24 units, roughly $160,000 per door. It was an off-market transaction, which means it wasn't listed on the market. Instead, the listing broker, if there was a broker even, was able to put the puzzle pieces together and find a buyer and a seller, or I guess he had the seller, but find the buyer and put them together without actually listing it on the market. That property was constructed in 2017. Next is Newcastle Place. This was our high price point at roughly $172,000 a unit. 5.03 capitalization rate, really, really low. Again, another off-market transaction for newer construction. And then lastly is Miller Manor in Dallas. This property sold in June of 19. pretty much right after it was finished. It was constructed in 2019 as well. 160,000 per unit, roughly, at a 5.5 cap. That's it. My contact information is listed above. If you have any questions or follow-up comments, please feel free to call me, email me, reach out in any way. And then it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mike Erdman, who is the CEO of the Home Builders Association of Marion and Polk Counties.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks to Kurt and the SVN team. Appreciate being back here to talk about what's going on with the residential development and new construction market. When we talk about new construction, residential development certainly has a bearing on today's discussion of what's going on in the commercial market. New rooftops certainly have a very much an impact on retail, and of course, new population growth, new folks moving to the community makes an impact, of course, on job creation. And of course, it affects kind of diverse industry sectors that we may not think about, as A.R. Kenny talked about a little earlier, on grass seed production, certainly affected by the number of new rooftops. So as we look at new home sales, we'll start with that. You can see that we had a big jump in 2019, that we actually sold about 55% more new homes in 2019 than we did the year prior. It was about 700 homes, and this is in the entire Salem MSA, that's both Marion and Polk counties combined, and that was compared to about 450 the year prior, so a real significant jump. Keep in mind, of course, that the new home sales, these are just the sales that are listed with the multiple listing service, so it does not account for all of the new homes that are built in the community. Of course, many custom build jobs and the like never get listed, and so they show up a little separately. A big contributor to the jump in sales this past year was the North Star subdivision that came online in Northeast Salem. I think 140 new homes sold in that project alone in 2019. But really, it was much more than just what we saw at North Star. It was other communities around Salem as well. And so we saw quite a bit of residential growth in Polk County, in both Dallas and Independence. And in Marion County, we saw quite a bit of growth in Turner, Almsville, and Sublimity. And I'll talk about this here in just a little bit, but really I think when we look at the local housing market, we have to think much bigger than just Salem-Keizer. We're seeing much more growth go to these outlying communities. I won't spend a whole lot of time on price per square foot, what we're seeing on pricing, other than to say that prices continue to go up, but perhaps not at the same rate that we have seen in past years. I think we saw about a 5% increase in 2019, and that is down from the 10 to 15% increases that we had seen just a couple years prior. As sales shot up this past year, we saw inventory really plunge. And so inventory at the end of 2018 had actually grown to about 6 months supply. And that's still a fairly healthy market, a good balance between buyers and sellers. But at that point in time, with inventory starting to increase, builders were starting to get a little nervous, not knowing was that an early indication that we were seeing a bit of a cool in the market. But certainly, as you can see, this past year that has dropped. Interest rates, probably the biggest factor for that. They have dropped by, what, 1.25 points over the last 12 to 18 months. And so that has really fueled that boom in new home sales. So we have seen inventory at this point drop to about a 3-month supply. And I'm not sure when exactly that's going to bottom out, but we really can't get a whole lot lower than that, just the timing involved in actually getting a sale. Here on this graph, you can see single-family starts. And again, this is for the entire region, Marion and Polk counties. And you can see, actually, that while sales were up in 2019, our starts were actually down just a little bit. And that may seem a little contradictory. But when you think about it, it's not. Of course, we had a big surge in starts back in 2018. Of course, it can take 4 or 5 months to get those homes built. And so by the time they're actually ready to go on the market and be sold, many of those actually sold in 2019. And of course, with the excess inventory we had a year prior, many of those homes sold off throughout the year as well. So no surprise there. Certainly, starts have been up the last couple years. We saw sales jump in 2019. But you can see when you go back historically, we are still not building the number of new homes that we need based on historical absorption of new construction. You see what we built last year in terms of our real numbers is really equal to what we built 30 years ago, back in 1989. And you would expect, given the fact that our population now is about 60% greater than it was back then, that instead of seeing 1,100 or 1,200 homes built in 2019, that number really would be about 1,900 if we had that same level of construction with the greater population. Perhaps a more meaningful way of looking at, are we building enough product for the folks that are moving into the community, is to look at how many housing units are we building for every 100 new residents that move to the community. And you can see here that we continue to underbuild. Right now we're only building about 26 housing units for every 100 new folks that moves into town. And that's well below the historical numbers that we've seen in the past. On average, going back over the last 30, 40 years, we've averaged about 35 housing units. And this is both single family and multifamily combined. But nonetheless, when you go back and look at what we've done in the past, we've built quite a bit more than what we've built today, even though our numbers are up. This data actually comes from HUD. They have not updated for 2019 yet, but given the fact that our starts were very similar to what we saw in 2018, I would anticipate this chart is going to be virtually the same as what you see here, really no change for 2019. That shortage of building lots, or the shortage of building lots, that is without question contributing to kind of the depressed numbers on new construction. And that's not unique to Salem. That is a problem that builders are facing all across the country. We're seeing the same challenges. Acquisition, development, and construction financing is a lot more difficult to get from banking institutions than it was in decades past. Banks are without question under a lot more regulatory scrutiny than they used to be, and so that makes it a lot more difficult for builders and developers to get that kind of financing. I am hearing some kind of anecdotal reports that lending is getting a little looser on the AD&C side of it, and so that's good. But we're still seeing, I think, probably a majority of what we see developed and built in Salem today is probably done with private money. And of course, that comes with greater costs than what you traditionally see with bank financing. Salem subdivision lot applications, and you can see that took a jump in 2019, and I want to point out, this is important, the graph you have in your packet is wrong. I had incomplete data from the city when we put this graph together for the packet. But we actually had a nice jump in lot creation, applications coming into the city this past year. We were up over 600 lots, and so many of those lots, of course, won't be online during 2020, but it's good to see that pipeline grow, and we start to ramp up with more and more lots coming online. So we're seeing, of course, more lots coming online in Salem, but really we're seeing a lot more activity taking place outside of Salem and Kaiser as well. It used to be really that about 65% of the new construction that we had in this area was done in Salem and Kaiser proper. But Kaiser is largely built out. The only parcels left in Kaiser pretty much are small infill parcels. Salem is getting more and more expensive to build. It's tough to find land that is feasible for construction. Of course, we're unique when you look at other communities up and down the valley, in that the land that we have tends to be in the hills, the vacant land that we have. And that's different from the west side of Portland, for example, that's former farmland, or perhaps down into Albany, Corvallis. And so our land tends to be more expensive to develop. And so what we're seeing is more and more of our residential growth is going outside of Salem and Kaiser. It's going into those surrounding communities that are becoming much more so bedroom communities. And so you can see here that back in the mid-'80s, was about 40% of the homes in the area were built outside of Salem and Kaiser. But that's been a very clear and consistent pattern over the last 30 or 40 years. More and more of our residential growth is going outside of Salem. It's going into communities like Dallas. Dallas in the last couple of years has permitted 250 homes, in a community that's, 10% the size of Salem. Sublimity has had a lot of residential growth. Independence has had a lot of that growth. And so what we're finding is that, developers can find land in those communities that's less expensive. They find that those communities typically are a lot easier to deal with in terms of the approval process. It's quicker to get land developed. Builders are attracted by larger parcels, builders and buyers, attracted by larger parcels, by less expensive parcels. And so all of that is helping fuel additional growth outside of Salem and Kaiser. And I really think this trend is going to continue. Of course, we have some affordable product now on the east side of town, in the North Star subdivision, and coming online later this year, the site of the former mushroom plant, which is the East Park subdivision. And so we have some good parcels that offer more affordable lots, but those are going to be gone fairly soon. And when those are gone, The rest of the land that we have available for us is, as I said, it's in West Salem, it's in South Salem, it's a lot more expensive, and so I think we'll see that continued trend of developers and builders looking outside of Salem and Kaiser itself. And finally, I want to make note of House Bill 2001, and you may have heard about this in the last year or so. This passed in the 2019 legislative session. And the legislature has recognized, of course, that we need more housing and we need more affordable housing. And so in an effort to help produce more supply, this law was passed that requires cities of a certain size to allow for different housing types on single-family lots. And so while it doesn't apply to cities under 10,000 in population, by June 30th of next year, our cities that are between 10 and 25,000 in population, which is Silverton, Dallas, Monmouth, and Independence, must allow duplexes on any single-family lot. And then a year later, in June of 2022, the larger cities over 25,000 in population, which is Salem and Kaiser and Woodburn, they must allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, or cottage clusters on any single-family lot. And so that's going to be a big change. The deadlines, I think we're going to run up right against those, as I've talked to planning staff both in Salem and in Kaiser. They're expecting to take all the way until those deadlines pretty much to get the codes written so that that's allowed to happen. But I'm getting phone calls already from some of my members, from property owners that are asking questions about that. They have parcels that they have in mind to do this additional type of what they call missing middle housing. And so I think that does offer opportunities to real estate investors as they look at homes that may be on larger lots that offer those opportunities for redevelopment and additional housing units on those lots. And so we'll be looking for those. I think we'll see more of those, and really not too distant into the future. And so that's all I have for my presentation. I thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Tom Hoffert.
Well, we are set to wrap up our morning agenda, and this group of experts on my right and left are here in a voluntary capacity to share their leadership and wisdom. Let us again recognize our speakers today. Some housekeeping information. This program, you note, is being filmed today, and there are two crucial partners in that. The great work of our community partner at CCTV and the skilled craftsmanship of Allied Video Production. Those two work in kind of collaboration to digitize this event, and this will be up along with the program that you have in front of you, and that valuable information will be digitized and available next week at the SVN website. That address is important to know, SVNCA, commercialadvisors.com. Okay, SVNCA.com. Look for that next week. We'd like to thank the Convention Center and their staff for the great meal this morning. I always reflect at our chamber events. Think how far we've come in hotel and conference center food. Full credit to Steve Johnson and his team here at the Salem Convention Center. When I think of when we put over 20 years ago, 25 plus years ago, the first shovel into the earth and imagined what this footprint could look like, it's a credit to all the community organizations and leaders in this room who made that possible, and we now enjoy the fruits of that labor every time we gather here. We talk about excitement and things that are coming to our city. Yet another area that you can type in to your smart device or your laptop or your desktop when you get into the office is flysle.com. And there is a very concerted effort right now with the support of our mayor and a lot of community leaders to bring back commercial air service to this community. We are the only city capital west of Arkansas without commercial air service flying into it. We need to reunite those efforts, and if you go on to the FlySLE website, you'll note a crucial event they have coming up to help further that cause and make commercial air service in our state capital a reality again. And lastly, we have the ability to show our mayor a lot of support today. If you have lunch plans, be it at Ritter's or any of our great downtown businesses, I'd ask but one day. Today, call the person you're meeting with and say, we need to dine at the State of the City address. Our local downtown restaurants do a great job providing us wonderful meals. Today, the gentleman to my right needs your support in being at that meeting. Showing up is how we show that support to Mayor Bennett. Chuck's done an incredible job in a very, very complex dynamic with the city council he's presented right now. It's our chance as a community to rally behind this mayor and say, we are going to stand with you. We want to hear your message, and we believe in the aspirational hope that this city can continue to develop into the city we all are proud to call home. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to this the SVN Commercial Advisor team, Kurt and his leadership, to U.S. Bank for being the presenting sponsor today, and to the great companies that have made this event possible. Go have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you 11:30 today right in this room for the State of the City address. Be great out there. Thank you.